Welcome, lords and ladies, back to the realm. I am your humble host, the GoatKing, and today we have a special guest. If you would like to introduce yourself and your channel.
Hello, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. And I am here to talk about some of my favorite species in Starfinder with the GoatKing.
I will make sure that all of these species are linked in the description to their entries on Archives of Nethys because, as always, all of this is available for free. Support Paizo where you can, but if you just want to get a quick look at some of these awesome species, it'll be linked in the description. Mark, would you like to take us off with your first pick?
So, I had a really hard time picking out number 3 for my list. And there were two that I went back and forth, but one of them had to fall off. So my honorable mention is the Demai from Alien Archive 2. And there's a couple of reasons. One, they are kaiju fighters. Like, their planet is just overrun with these giant kaiju. It's basically the Godzilla-verse as a planet. And you have this species that is trying to survive on said planet. And I absolutely love that. There's a lot of great stories there. And then the other reason is one of the Demai characters, my wife and I both agree, looks straight up like our friend Eric. He could cosplay that character and you would not be able to tell a difference. And so we honestly believe he is moonlighting at Paizo. He looks so similar to that character. So
That's great.
Demai are my honorable mention.
My honorable mentions, and it's not all of them, if I had, as you guys can tell from the long story on this channel, I love the various variety of species in Starfinder. It was very hard to narrow them down. The two honorable mentions that I have are the Brenneri, they are the Otterfolk, and the Hanakin, which are feathered raptors. They're both just so cool, and can't get into them. They're honorable mentions. But they both knocked each other out because I like them for the same reasons. And so, neither of them could stand alone and make itself notable in this ever so competitive ranking.
I will say the Brenneri were contenders for my list. I think they wound up about number 6 overall for me, but the Brenneri are really cool. I think I can see why they would be on your honorable mentions list. So, but diving into my top 3 Starfinder species in general, my number 3 is the Telia from Alien Archive 3, which is the Starfinder take on Turtlefolk. Now, there are a couple of reasons for this, one of which is I do not understand why Pathfinder doesn't have Turtlefolk yet. That is just, that's one of the few things where I'm like, Paizo, do this, do it now. So I've wanted Turtlefolk in a Paizo product for a long time, so the Telia are already just kind of scratching that itch for me. But then the narrative that Paizo gives them in Starfinder I think is very interesting because the Telia play around with memory. They are such a long-lived species that they've been through so much that they've just kind of taken this approach to memory of, there's probably a lot of stuff I don't need to remember. And they get contrasted with the elves in the Starfinder setting because of the gap. The elves are frustrated because they've lost their history, whereas the Telia view it as, we don't have to keep up with it, we can make our own history going forward. And so they can play around with their memory, they can control their memory, and then they can also, like, their shells get patterned based upon their psychological experiences. There's just a lot of really cool playing around with the concept of how they perceive the world, how they how they remember things, I think it makes for a very interesting character concept. And when you have this long lived species, that's a very natural story to tell for that kind of character. So I think Paizo really did a good job nailing not just the here's how you can play a turtle folk, but also like here's some cool story that would naturally flow from that. So they take number 3 on my list.
Hmm. Yes, that is very neat. Do gotta say, this all springs to mind for me. When we get Starfinder Second Edition, how many of these are gonna make it? They've got to be compatible with Pathfinder Second Edition, but I hope they do something that still allows them to bring in, I
Mm-hmm.
hope a large majority, hopefully, of the great many playable species in
Mm-hmm.
Starfinder. And really, there's so many of them that I can't. It's so hard to actually rank them. So
Mm-hmm.
this is not quite in any particular order, but I will say in my third place are the Spathinae.
Okay.
These are the bug colonies made of individually specialized bugs. Each of them wears a piece of the armor. If they've got armor, they have it customized so that they can wear them in little pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Their individual bugs have names. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
are fully a colony of individuals. They just interact with everybody else as if they were one unit,
Mm-hmm.
using their colony name, as it were. And they're just,
Mm-hmm.
they can squeeze into places, they can reconfigure their limbs. Um, and in a similar way with the Telia setting aside memories, when a Spathinae takes injuries, it is losing individuals of the colony, and those
Mm-hmm.
are gone,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to replace those. And it's interesting that the survival of the colony is it's based on the survival of the individuals. But if the colony dies, that doesn't necessarily mean all the individuals are dead. Many will
Mm-hmm.
be alive still, and they will just disperse.
Mm-hmm.
You could have stories of finding and trying to collect together the pieces of this colony again to see if you can get information or memories out of them. That would fit very well in Starfinder, hunting down these bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Just try and speak with dead with them. I mean, how many times do you gotta cast Speak with Dead to make that work? It's But those are my tentative third place.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but if you've seen my channel, you know that tangents are happening. So sorry. I agree with you on Starfinder Second Edition. Paizo needs to do something to make the diversity of species that is part of Starfinder a core experience in Starfinder 2e. The Starfinder 2e, the equivalent to interstellar species, needs to drop early. Just, I honestly believe that.
Give us the tools
Mm-hmm.
to homebrew our own species, at the very least. Because it was
Mm-hmm.
first edition, it is very easy to homebrew your own species.
Mm-hmm.
One of my closest friends, that's his favorite part of the game, is that
Mm-hmm.
he can make his own species. He's a game master by heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the thing he is most upset to be losing, is that going towards the second edition system, it's going to be much harder to homebrew a species.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more involved.
Yep. So, the Starfinder has so many unique concepts that fall under the banner of species that that's really one of the things that sets the game apart. And I'm not super. Was it Spathinae?
Spathinae.
Yeah. Um, honestly, that's one of the ones that I've kind of glanced over. I didn't even know about them before you mentioned them. I'm going to go check them out after this video. But like that is a very unique concept, and stuff like that is some of the stuff that really needs to be an early part of Starfinder 2e. But we'll try to get back on topic. Let's go with number 2. What's your number 2?
The Kizar. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they were introduced in the Pact Worlds book, right near the end. They are these vine form plant creatures with this big lantern, papered like lantern
Yes.
seed head. They're so cool. They're
The
just they're beautiful. First of all, I want those characters. Um, they don't have a mouth. They don't speak. They have telepathy, so they're telepathic plants. They of course they care very much about the environment, but they also want to experience society and interactions with other people, and
mhm,
not having the ability to speak normally, and also they don't have eyes. They sense life forms. So
mhm,
for them, things like skin color,
mhm,
don't matter. All the usual indicators of socioeconomic status, not gonna matter. They're very detached from the cultural
mhm,
segregations that we have
mhm,
in society, and that makes this character who, as much as they're detached, they're still really interested in
mhm,
interacting with people, and it's I think it's cool.
mhm. I agree with you. The artwork on them is amazing. The artist and Starfinder have way too much fun, and that is a good example of them having way too much fun. So, for those of you who are unaware, GoatKing came over on my channel, and there's a video on my channel where he hangs out and we talk about classes. And in that video, I go on a gigantic tangent about how much I love telepathy being all over the place in Starfinder, and this is another example of that.
In fact, that video, I believe, will be linked in the description of this one. So, what was your second place choice?
All right, so this one is kind of it's almost a build your own style species. It's the Into symbiotes from
Hmm.
Alien Archives 4. Um, and the inspiration is obvious here. They're very much going for Venom or Carnage from Spider-Man comics. Like you can tell they're going for the symbiotes from the MCU. That's what they're playing off of. It's literally in the name. But they do a cool job of presenting it in a way where it's not going to automatically clash with a party. Like Venom and definitely Carnage definitely push in a darker direction than you would expect for an adventuring party. The Into symbiotes are a fungus that can merge with different creatures and build a symbiotic relationship, strengthening that creature, but also drawing from that creature's mind. And they become this one functioning individual, if you will, that can then go out and do all kinds of crazy stuff across the universe. But when you build an Into symbiote, you actually develop the creature that you're bonded with. And so, like, the example in the book is like this intelligent bat creature that has been bonded with the symbiote, but they have rules for all kinds of different creatures you could potentially bond with and what those stats and abilities might look like. But essentially, you can have a symbiote attached to something else and then go out and play Venom in the Starfinder setting. And I think it is really cool that they gave us that kind of flavorful character, but they also found a way to do it where it's like, okay, this can be a heroic concept. It can play well with the adventuring party and not feel disruptive to the game.
Yes. Um, Very much more a symbiotic relationship
Mm-hmm.
and much less a parasitic one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, moving on from that, I do believe we are getting to our final choices.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, anyone who has seen my Starfinder content on my channel, you're not going to be surprised by this pick. Skittermanders. All day, every day. I love them. They're the greatest thing ever. They need to be a core species in Starfinder 2nd Edition. Skittermanders are amazing. For those of you who have somehow missed out on the greatest species ever written, the Vescarium, your tyrannical lizard folk empire that's conquering the stars came to another planet and found this hyper friendly, helpful group of little furry creatures that they just exist to help others. And these conquerors came in intending to invade the world, take over the world, and the Skittermander's response was, "Cool, we'll help you." And the Vesk didn't know what to do. By honor, they couldn't fight them because they weren't fighting back. And the Vesk didn't know how to handle them, and so the Skittermanders have just infested Vesk society as they run around and help anywhere and everywhere that they can, and help is definitely in quotation marks because intelligence is one of their dump stats. They mess things up quite a bit.
They have the shortest attention spans.
Shortest attention spans. They will wander off halfway through a project, but they just walk around and enthusiastically help everyone. It is comedic gold. And I am personally of the opinion that you are not playing Starfinder correctly if there is not a Skittermander somewhere in the adventuring party. Not if you don't have someone playing one, adopt one. Every party needs one.
I will second your motion for them to be a core species. If goblins are going to be a core species of Pathfinder, and they are, then the equally hyper-energetic, chaotic creatures of Starfinder deserve just as much a spotlight. Hear us, Paizo. Put them in the core rulebook.
I can honestly say one of the players at my table, we both absolutely love the story of the Vesk and the Skittermanders and their place in Starfinder lore, and we're always nerding out about Skittermanders. There have been so many occasions at our various jobs around town where people who are not nerds, they don't play TTRPGs, we have had people dying laughing with the story of the Vesk and the Skittermanders. It's some of the best writing in the TTRPG industry. It is fantastic.
It's a little absurd that they're not core, given that the Vesk are. My final pick. It also came from the Pact Worlds book.
Okay.
That book is representing heavily for me. But they were also reprinted in Interstellar Species. It's the Astrozoan.
Okay.
And if you don't know what those are, they are 7-limbed starfish, fully stretched out 9 feet across, that stand up on 4 of their legs, or 5 of their legs. They have an eyeball at the midpoint of each of their arms. Limbs. And they're shapeshifters. Now, people generally mistrust shapeshifters. It is a common and in some ways warranted fear that many people have about shapeshifters. I see no reason to believe that fear should apply to the Astrozoan. You could argue that they shapeshift to make the people around them more comfortable. They are just trying to fit in and just live lives, and, some of them, in more cosmopolitan places like Absalom Station, go around in full starfish mode and live fully fulfilled lives like that. And a lot of places, you'd never know they were there. Because they are, they're stealth. They are just being a part of the community. And I think they're awesome. It's not the kind of ability you'd see in a fantasy game, or in Pathfinder at least, at level 1, that you can transform into a different species and stay that way as long as you want. But they can do it, and it's awesome.
They are another example of the artist in this game having way too much fun. To be honest, that is another species that was very high on my should this make the cut for me list. They also would have been the honorable mentions. But shapeshifting is a very, very fun narratively. The artwork is amazing. I think they are also a species you can just do a lot of cool stuff with. So
Yes. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of this video. We are 9 species in, counting our notable mentions.
mhm.
There's plenty more you can find on my channel or on Archives of Nethys. But before we wrap up, would you like to sell your channel, sell yourself, and make sure everybody knows exactly where to find you?
Well, I am the local disaster tour guide. I am here on YouTube. I also have a Discord channel that is free to join, and you can find that linked on any of the videos over on my channel. But I talk about I approach my channel largely from the perspective of a storyteller. That's why I love these games, and that's why I love playing stuff in this hobby. And so I like to talk about Pathfinder and Starfinder especially, but I love to talk about the art of storytelling, gathering together, hanging out with your friends, and spinning these cool tales together. And if you would like to be part of that conversation, I would love for you to come over and join on in.
And, as I mentioned before, will be linked in the description. I did a video just recently with our friend here over on his channel, so make sure to take a look at that. Thank you all for visiting the realm. I have been your host, the GoatKing. We have had Mark from the local disaster tour guide helping us with today's video. And, as always, travel with loyal companions.
Have a wonderful day.